So, namaste and a very good afternoon. Thank you, Anita ma'am, for inviting me to speak on this topic, pandemics in history, a throwback. So, I would take you to a journey of pandemics in history. Phenomena of epidemic or pandemics are no novelty for human race. Our relation with them is as old as the civilization itself. World history is replete with stories of epidemics and pandemics destroying generations, empires, and even civilizations. They have often been the cause of big changes in the course of human history. They are known to act as catalysts and triggers, ushering humanity into new eras of socio-economic and political revolutions and even theological developments. One of the earliest recorded epidemic in human history seems to be 5,000 years old, as documented by the Chinese anthropologists through their astonishing discovery of prehistoric mass burial sites in the regions of Hamin Manga and Miaozingyo in the northwestern China, dating back to 3000 BC. The archaeological and anthropological studies indicated mass deaths having taken place in this region too quickly to afford proper burials. Discovery of no habitation thereafter in this region was also confirmed. Subsequent analysis of the facts collected from there suggests that an epidemic might have ravaged the entire region. From hereafter, sporadic episodes of emergence of epidemics have been recorded very regularly, with regularity in history in many parts of the world with an interval of less than 200 to 500 years. The World Health Organization changed the status of COVID-19 from epidemic to pandemic on 11th March 2020 after confirmed cases of afflicted persons worldwide reached over 118,000 in over 110 countries and territories around the world and the sustained risk of further global spread. Despite constraints of mobility and limited means of communication, epidemics like the Athens plague, Rome's Antonine plague, Cyprian plague, Justinian plague, etc., spread to vast regions of Europe, causing extensive deaths and destruction to human activities during 5th century BC to 5th century AD. Subsequently, accounts of devastations caused by the Black Death of 14th century in Europe, Cocolicy Epidemic in South America, American plague in 16th century, plagues of London, Marseille, Russia have all laid a devastating effect on mankind. In recent times, fear, anxiety, and harm caused by Philadelphia yellow fever epidemic of 1793, flu pandemic of 1889-90, American polio of 1916, Spanish flu of 1918-20, Asian flu of 1957, and H1N1 swine flu of 2009 are still fresh in our living memories. Not to forget about AIDS, Ebola, and Zika epidemics we have had a combat with. Even though each one of these epidemics caused large-scale destructions and disruptions to human life in their own time, two cases stand out for their uniqueness and wider influence on the course of human history. One is the Cocolicy Epidemic of 1545, in which Spanish explorers unintentionally carried from Europe the common cold virus with them on their expedition to South America and introduced it inadvertently among the native Aztec and Incas population of South America, with whom Spanish army was engaged in an armed struggle to subjugate them for their wealth and gold and to enslave and colonize them for the imperial cause. For Spanish soldiers, Cocolicy virus was a form of common cold with which they have lived for centuries and developed full immunity in their bodies. But for the Aztec and Incas, it was an absolutely alien virus for which their bodies had no immunity at all. For them, it was a highly contagious, transmittable disease that was fatal for them. As per estimates made by historians, the viral hemorrhage fever, which is called Cocolicy, which means pest in Mexican language, killed 15 million inhabitants of Mexico and Central America that wiped out their entire civilization to be taken over by the Spanish army with ease and without much resistance due to the sudden breakdown of their entire administrative, economic, and social infrastructure affected by the pandemic. This is perhaps one historical event when the destruction of not just one generation but the entire civilization that took many thousand years to build can be directly linked and attributed to one miserly virus and a deadly pandemic. Story of second case of Black Death of Europe that was between 1346 to 1353 AD is even more intriguing, and it is credited to have influenced the course of not only the European history in all its economic and political dimensions, but influenced the course of human history itself, of which we are also a product. The Black Death, also known as plague, continued to cause havoc in the European continent between 1347 to 1352 AD. It killed an estimated 25-30 million people in those days when birth rate was low, child mortality was high, and average lifespan was very short. Black Death disease was caused by a bacillus bacteria that was carried by fleas living on the skin of the rodents. It is an interesting fact that this disease is believed to have its origin around the same regions of China from where our current COVID-19 has originated. Black Death bacteria traveled on the Silk Road from China to Europe and went up to the Black Sea area in Crimea along with Mongol warriors and traders. The plague had entered in Europe via Italy. Records of history suggest that this disease was carried by rats on trading ships sailing from the Black Sea. Plague was known in Europe as the Black Death because it turned the skin and sores to black color, while other symptoms included fever and joint pains. The mortality rate of this disease was very high. Up to 2/3 of afflicted used to die from this disease. It is estimated that between 30% to 50% of the population of places affected by it died from the Black Death. The death toll was so high that it broke down the entire medieval society of Europe as a whole. It caused severe shortage of farmers and labor force in Europe. The suffering experienced by peasants led them to demand end of serfdom. This pandemic had turned the docile and passive countryside peasantry into an aggressive population, asking questions, challenging authorities, and ready to rebuild. Many towns and villages lost their entire population. Administrative hierarchies abandoned their posts. There were no organized production of any kind of consumables and no collections of taxes during the 5 long years when this pandemic tormented the European population with death and destruction. By one estimate, it took nearly 200 years for the population of Europe to get back to the economic levels they used to be prior to the Black Death. Acute shortage of labor helped development of new technologies, mechanization, automation, and ultimately to the Industrial Revolution that transformed the modern world. Many historians and social scientists find the seeds of Renaissance inherent in this period. The spirit of questioning authority, established norms and beliefs, unjust social and political systems, and the courage to resist them seems to have its origin here. It was the same spirit that found its manifestation in the French and Russian revolutions at a later date. It seems that the human spirit was kindled through this extraordinary event. It is also speculated that this Black Death had significantly contributed to the sudden withdrawal of Mongols from Central Asia roughly the same time. This also had a tremendous impact on the political history history of this region, giving rise to the Turkish movement, who ultimately defeated the Byzantines of Constantinople and established the Ottoman Empire in Istanbul, that is modern-day Turkey. Now, people believe that these pandemics may have different regions. Like, some believe that it may be the wrath of gods. In many ancient societies, people believed that spirits and gods inflicted disease and destruction upon those that deserved their wrath. This may be unscientific, but this perception often led to disastrous responses that resulted in the deaths of thousands, if not millions. In the case of Justinian's plague, the Byzantine historian Procopius of Caesarea traced the origins of the plague to China and northeast India via land and sea trade routes to Egypt, where it entered the Byzantine Empire through Mediterranean ports. Despite his apparent knowledge of the role geography and trade played in this spread, Procopius laid blame for the outbreak on the Emperor Justinian, declaring him to be either a devil or invoking God's punishment for his evil ways. Some historians found that this event could have dashed Emperor Justinian's effort to reunite the western and eastern remnants of the Roman Empire and marked the beginning of the Dark Ages. Luckily, humanity's understanding of the causes of disease has improved, and this is resulting in a drastic improvement in the response of modern pandemics, albeit slow and incomplete. As we know, this disease can be imported from one place to another and is happening at the moment around the world. Now, to safeguard from this disease, the first thing which is asked to be done is to quarantine. Now, what is the history of quarantine? The practice of quarantine began during the 14th century in an effort to protect coastal cities from plague epidemics. Cautious port authorities required ships arriving in Venice from infected ports to sit at anchor for 40 days before landing. The origin of the word quarantine is from the Italian quaranta giorni or 40 days. One of the first instances of relying on geography and statistical analysis was in mid-19th century London during a cholera outbreak. In 1854, Dr. John Shaw came to the conclusion that cholera was spreading via tainted water and decided to display neighborhood mortality through a map. This method revealed a cluster of cases around the specific pump from which people were drawing their water. While the interactions created through trade and urban life play a pivotal role, it is also the virulent nature of particular diseases that indicate the trajectory of a pandemic. Now, we have been trying to track the infection, and this has also been happening in the past pandemics. Scientists use a basic measure to track the infectiousness of a disease called the reproduction number, also known as RO or R0. This number tells us how many susceptible people on average each sick person will in turn infect. Measles used to top the list, being the most contagious with the RO range of 12 to 18. This means a single person may have infected on an average 12 to 18 people in an unvaccinated population, but I think COVID-19 has left it far behind. The more people are immune to a disease, the less likely it is to proliferate, making vaccinations critical to prevent the resurgence of known and treatable diseases. The more civilized human became, with larger cities, more exotic trade routes, and increased contact with different populations of the globe, animals, and ecosystems, the more likely pandemics would occur. Despite the persistence of disease and pandemics throughout history, there is one consistent trend over time: a gradual reduction in the death rate. Healthcare improvements and understanding the factors that incubate pandemics have been powerful tools in mitigating their impact. It is hard to calculate and forecast the true impact of COVID-19, as COVID-19 is still with us and likely to remain with us for some more time to come. Our much advanced scientific knowledge, technological sophistication, robust administrative infrastructures, and control over social behavior will help humanity tide over this crisis and minimize its damage to the extent possible. But prolonged global lockdown will have its own effect on economy, society, political fortunes, and technology, as happened in the past. Domestic political fortunes of powerful leaders will definitely be directly linked to how they conducted themselves and managed this crisis in their own countries. Quality of leadership will be put to close scrutiny and test. Existing geopolitical trends of big power rivalry, realignment of international forces on ideological lines will get sharpened and accentuated. Charm of mindless globalization is likely to suffer as world will try to turn inwards and avoid global supply chains that are vulnerable, fragile, and unnaturally created solely for commercial consideration. Economies will seek stability over growth, work towards domestic employment over profit, and self-sufficiency over global dependencies. Cyber technologies, e-commerce, digitalization, and digital interaction got a tremendous boost during this crisis and proved their utility, value, and dependence beyond doubt. The rate of digitalizing the world will now be accelerated to a different level, as we all are experiencing that during this lockdown we have used the maximum number of technology, we have interacted maximum with people through technology, and I'm very happy to understand that at times we as teachers were obstructed by various measures that we were not able to reach our students. Sometimes our students were hospitalized for some reasons. They had all the wish to join the class but were not able to join the class. I think this technological advancement will erase all such kind of hindrances in the path of learning. The rate of digitalizing the world will now be accelerated to a new level. Redundancy of the classical concepts of privacy in the new digitalized world will become more acceptable, and electronic surveillance will get further legitimacy in all the societies. They will now be aggressively promoted by strong governments. Better performance of authoritarian governments over their liberal counterparts will create many ideological dilemma in the minds of people, and many voting patterns will change to bring forward strong leaderships with less democratic credentials and regards. We can expect to see great changes in social behavior and social norms as well. People all over the world will now understand the importance of physical distancing and personal hygiene at all levels. We as Indians were always behind personal hygiene. We used to wash our hands before doing everything, before having our food, when we used to come back to our home. And I think these such practices will now be practiced by the rest of the world also. We can see changes in the office working norms as well. Common man will intuitively start distancing itself from crowded places, affecting the popular culture of malls and melas and marriages with big gatherings. People, shopping habits and shopping patterns will be greatly affected by this crisis. I think overall the future societies coming out of this experience will be more sophisticated, digitalized, individualistic, less socially savvy, isolationist, and gravitate towards more authoritative leadership than soft democracies. Before I go ahead, I just wanted to share a slide with you. I hope I'm able to do that. This is who you can be. Are you able to see the slide?
Yes, of course, ma'am.
Yeah. So this is about what we choose to be during COVID-19. The first step is fear zone. Do we choose to remain in the fear zone as the most of the country is doing? What do I do during this period? Do I grab food? Do I grab toilet paper and medications that I don't use out of fear that I may need it and I may not get it? Do I spread emotions related to fear and anger? Do I complain frequently what is happening and why it is happening? Do I forward all messages I receive without checking their authenticity and without understanding what emotions they are going to create ahead? Or do I get mad easily that what to do and why and so many restrictions are imposed on me? Or I can step forward to the second zone, that is the learning zone. And what I can do in this learning zone is I start to give up what I can't control. If I can't go out, let me go within myself. Let me introspect myself. Let me see what I can do. I stop compulsively consuming what hurts me, whether it was food that was coming from outside or it is some news that disturbs me. I have to understand how I can remain untouched with it. I have to identify my emotions. Am I in fear? Am I in anger? Am I able to control it? If not, what practices I can do to exercise and have a control on my own emotions? I became aware of the situation and think how to act. Can I be proactive? Can I think how I will be acting if things go worse? I can evaluate informing before spreading something false. I can create something interesting which gives a smile to the face of the people instead of just forwarding something that creates fear. I can recognize that what we all are trying to do our best in this condition. And if we are really proactive, we can take ourselves to the third step, that is the growth zone. And what we can do in this growth zone is I think of others and see how to help them instead of just criticizing what government could have done and what they are doing, what cops could have done and what they are doing. Can I contribute my little bit and help in erasing and eradicating the problems in the society? I make my talents available to those who need them. And what are these talents? We are very lonely in these lockdown periods. There may be people around us in our neighborhood who are alone in their houses. At least if you don't know absolutely anything, sing a good bhajan for them. Play an antakshari on the WhatsApp instead of just forwarding unuseful messages. I live in the present and focus on the future, that how I can utilize this lockdown period. Can I write a book? Can I think of composing a song? Can I do some painting with whatever is available at home? Can I be empathetic with myself and with others? What I am suffering through, others are also suffering through the same thing. What I can do to be happy? Can I thank and appreciate others that whatever has been done by coming through all the adversities which are around? Can I keep happy emotional state and spread hope instead of spreading fear? Can I look for a way to adapt to new changes? Can I practice gratitude, patience, relationships, and creativity? With this, I believe if we are able to act something new in this period of COVID-19, after the lockdown will be over, we'll find ourselves a completely changed person. And before I put an end to the history of pandemics and how to combat with it, I just can say, सुख दुख तो जीवन में आते और जाते हैं, दुख ज्यादा आ जाए तो घबराना कैसा, हिम्मत से काम लेंगे हम, घबराना कैसा, मन में है विश्वास, पूरा है विश्वास, कोरोना जाएगा, एक नया सवेरा आएगा और हम मजबूती से उभरेंगे, ऐसी सिचुएशन में घबराना कैसा. To counter with the coronavirus, what we need is not social distancing. Somehow I do not relate with the word social distancing. What we have to do is physical distancing and social solidarity. We are the soldiers for all those who are alone. We will give our every bit to make people happy and make their life easy as much as possible. At the end, I would like to thank Dr. Shashikant Dikshit ji, Professor Rachna Dubey ji, Dr. Anita Singh ji, and Mr. Kuldeep Sharma, along with their entire team who definitely were in the third zone of growth zone, gave us a chance to utilize our time creatively, and you all were physically distant but very close to all of us during this time. Thank you very much. Take care and stay safe.
Oh, that was wonderful, Veenus ma'am. Your voice has a healing capacity in this pandemic era.
Thank you, ma'am.
So we were listening to Professor Veenus Jain ma'am, who's focused on so many aspects, how to spread positivity. She drew a holistic picture of pandemic from the early ages across the world. We have to decide whether it's a God's plan or it's human plan. But she delineated the entire history of quarantine, the future of society, what would it be in the post-pandemic era. So this was a beautiful lecture delivered by Professor Veenus Jain.
I would like to say, ma'am, my only message is just be creative as much as possible. And one of the assignments I have given to all my mentees around the world, I would like all of you to try it. And that is, every day, write one of the beautiful incidences of your life. When you're so much stressed, think of a beautiful incident. Write one incident a day. And during this lockdown period, prepare a compendium of beautiful incidences in your life and name it Life is Beautiful. So whenever afterwards you are in stress, go back to this compendium and there will be something that will make you smile and tell you how beautiful life is. COVID-19 things will come and go, but happiness is long lasting and that has to be in our hearts. Thank you once again.
Group Captain Mehta, and I will like Dr. Veenus ma'am for this beautiful talk that she has given, covering so many aspects of this pandemic, its history, its past, its present, and its future. So thank you very much. It was a lovely, lovely talk, and we enjoyed and we got benefited so much of it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Group Captain Mehta.